My parents ditched my baby's funeral for my brother's pool party said, "It's only a baby. Your brother's party is more important." I laid my child to rest alone that they had no idea what I'd do next. My infant daughter's funeral felt like a nightmare, but the real horror was knowing my parents were celebrating my brother's engagement just miles away. How could a family choose a pool party over their own grandchild's goodbye? The cold, damp earth seemed to mock the warmth Sophie had brought into our lives. As I watched her tiny, white casket descend, each shovel of dirt felt like a hammer blow to my soul, echoing my mother's casual cruelty. "It's just a baby. Your brother's party matters more." That day, something inside me didn't just break, it irrevocably shattered. Before I dive into how I finally made them confront the chilling reality of their choice, take a moment to drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Because this isn't just my story. It's a testament to the kind of betrayal that makes you question everything you thought you knew about family. Growing up, I was the daughter, the quiet achiever. My brother, Daniel, 3 years my senior, was the sun around which our parents' world revolved. Elizabeth, my mother, and Thomas, my father, now in their late 50s and early 60s, had perfected the art of the golden child dynamic. Daniel's every mediocre triumph was met with fanfare, lavish parties, proud announcements. My accomplishments, they were often met with a polite, almost dismissive nod, or worse, completely overshadowed. I remember the year Daniel made the school soccer team, an entire backyard barbecue, all our relatives celebrating. The same year, I got into the honors program. Their response, "Oh, that's nice, Clara," before immediately asking Daniel about his upcoming game. This pattern wasn't just a phase, it was the blueprint of our lives. His average grades were effortful, well-rounded. My straight A's? Expected. Unremarkable. By high school, I'd learned my place. I poured my energy into building my own life, finding friends who genuinely saw and valued me. Then, in college, I met David. His family felt alien, warm, supportive, genuinely interested in each other's lives. His parents remembered birthdays, asked about his day, celebrated small wins. It felt like a play, too perfect to be real, until I slowly understood this was what real family love looked like. David and I dated through college, marrying 3 years ago when we were both 27. He's an architectural engineer. I'm a pediatric nurse. We bought a starter home, a comfortable 40-minute drive from my parents, and a full hour from his. The distance from my own family was no accident, though I never said that out loud to David. When we announced our pregnancy, David's parents were over the moon. They dove headfirst into baby shower planning, discussing nursery themes, sending articles on childbirth. My parents, "Oh, that's nice," my mother said, almost an afterthought. Did Daniel mention he's up for a promotion at the firm? Even at the baby shower, thrown by my wonderful in-laws, my parents mainly conversed about Daniel's recent Bahamian getaway. His path was paved with gold, prestigious job, luxury condo, beautiful women. Each step was a grand event. They'd even helped with his condo down payment. When I dared to mention the unfairness of this, my mother had waved a dismissive hand. "Daniel has a more expensive lifestyle to maintain, Clara. You and David are practical people." Practical people, code for you don't deserve the same. Sophie entered the world on a snowy January morning, a tiny miracle with David's dark hair and my blue eyes. Holding her, that first moment, an overwhelming wave of love hit me, so fierce it ached. David's parents arrived within hours, tears of joy, thoughtful gifts. My parents, they showed up the next day, stayed precisely 45 minutes, then my mother remembered her hair appointment and they were gone. For 6 precious months, David's parents were a constant, loving presence. Weekly visits, helping hands, thousands of photos, a specially curated album, always telling us what a beautiful family we were. My parents came twice. Once, weeks after Sophie's birth, because my mother's book club friend insisted on seeing the baby. The second time, they were just in the area for one of Daniel's work dinners. They held Sophie like she was a fragile, ticking bomb, visibly relieved when her tiny cries gave me an excuse to take her back. Still, I foolishly sent weekly photo updates. Sophie's first smile, her rolling over, her infectious giggle. My mother's usual response, a single thumbs-up emoji. My father? Crickets. Nothing. Then, 2 months before Sophie died, Daniel announced his engagement to Olivia, a pharmaceutical rep he'd been dating for 8 months. My parents immediately launched into planning an elaborate engagement party. My mother called me daily with venue updates, menu decisions, guest lists. The party date? It clashed directly with Sophie's dedication at our church, a ceremony my parents had already agreed to attend. When I gently reminded my mother, her voice hardened. "Oh, we'll have to miss the baby thing," she'd said, as if it were a minor inconvenience. "This is Daniel's engagement, Clara. That's a once-in-a-lifetime event." I wanted to scream, a baby dedication only happens once too. But the words, as always, caught in my throat. A week before Sophie died, she caught a mild cold. Just a runny nose, a little congestion. Her pediatrician reassured us it was a minor viral infection, nothing to worry about. Still, I took a few days off work just to hold her close. By the weekend, she seemed better, her gummy smile back, eating normally. I had no way of knowing those would be our final days together, our last precious moments of a life that felt complete. It was a Tuesday night when our world imploded. David and I had put Sophie to bed around 8, after her evening bottle. She'd been perfect, babbling, playing with her favorite stuffed rabbit, eating well. We watched an episode of our show, went to bed around 11. The baby monitor was silent, too silent. When my alarm went off at 6 a.m. for my early shift, a cold dread seized me. Sophie usually woke around 5 for a feeding. I walked into her nursery, the one we'd painted soft yellow with tiny woodland creatures on the walls. In her white crib, surrounded by the fluffy animals David's parents had given her, Sophie lay still. Utterly, terrifyingly still. "Sophie," I whispered, my voice a broken prayer, touching her cheek. It was cold. What happened next exists in my memory as a series of shattering fragments. My own screams tearing through the quiet house, waking David. The frantic thud of his footsteps. His hands, pushing me aside, trying to breathe life back into our daughter's tiny body. My trembling fingers fumbling with the phone, dialing 911. The dispatcher's calm voice, asking questions I couldn't comprehend. Paramedics, their grim faces, in our suburban home. The ambulance ride, Sophie's motionless form. Hospital lights, blinding, sterile. A doctor, kind eyes, delivering the impossible news. "I'm so sorry. Your daughter died from what appears to be sudden infant death syndrome." David collapsed against the sterile wall. I stood frozen, the words swirling, meaningless. This couldn't be real. We did everything right. Sophie slept on her back. Bare crib. No blankets. Perfect temperature. Every SIDS guideline. Yet here we were, being asked if we wanted to hold our daughter one last time. We spent hours with her, memorizing every perfect feature, holding her cold, small hands, kissing her forehead. The hospital chaplain came. A grief counselor spoke softly. Someone mentioned funeral arrangements. The world kept moving, but I was utterly, completely still. Hours later, through a thick fog, I remembered my parents. My hands shook as I dialed my mother's number. "Mom," I choked out. "Sophie died last night." "SIDS. We're at the hospital." A beat of silence. Then her voice, flat, devoid of emotion. "Oh, Clara, that's terrible." No gasp. No immediate tears. "No, I'm on my way." Just a distant acknowledgement. "We need to arrange a funeral," I continued, desperate for some glimmer of a mother, some support. "Yes, I suppose you do. Let us know the details." That was it. No questions about David or me. No offer of help. Meanwhile, David's parents, the moment we'd called, had dropped everything and were already speeding to the hospital. The next few days were a gray blur of endless paperwork and soul-crushing grief. David and I moved like ghosts. His parents, however, were our anchors, arranging the funeral, ordering flowers, ensuring we ate. My parents called once. "When's the funeral?" my mother asked. "Friday at 11. I told her, at Greenview Cemetery. A pause. "Friday," she repeated. "Oh dear. That's the day of Daniel's pool party. His engagement celebration. We've already committed." I thought I was hallucinating. "Mom," I whispered, "this is Sophie's funeral. Your granddaughter's funeral." "I understand that, Clara, but we can't cancel on Daniel now." All the arrangements are made. Everyone's coming. You understand, don't you? No. I did not understand. No, Mom, I said, my voice shaking. Please explain it to me. She sighed, a sound of weary irritation. Clara, I know you're upset, but think rationally. It's just a baby. Your brother's party matters more. Sophie was only here for a few months. You can always have another baby. But Daniel's engagement is important to his future. The words hit me like physical blows. It's just a baby. Your brother's party matters more. You can always have another baby. In that instant, something inside me didn't just harden, it calcified. The profound hurt twisted into something cold, clear, and utterly terrifying, a crystal clear understanding of who my parents truly were. I see, was all I could manage before the line went dead. David found me on the bedroom floor, phone still clutched in my hand. When I relayed what my mother had said, his face contorted into pure rage. He wanted to call them back, unleash a torrent of truth. But I stopped him. I felt hollow beyond anger. It doesn't matter, I told him. It's always been this way. I just never wanted to admit it. The morning of Sophie's funeral was cruelly bright, a perfect blue sky mocking the darkness within me. I stood before my closet, staring at the black dress I'd somehow bought, trying to process the grotesque reality. I was choosing an outfit for my child's funeral. On the drive to the cemetery, I checked my phone one last time, a desperate, foolish hope flickering. Nothing from my parents. Instead, a text from Daniel, sorry about the baby. Hope the funeral goes okay. Excited to see everyone at the party later. I switched off my phone. Sophie's casket was impossibly small. White, with silver handles, adorned with pink roses. It looked like something for a doll, not my child. Standing beside it, in the cemetery's Garden of Angels, a section reserved for infants, I felt utterly disconnected from my own body. David stood beside me, his face a mask of grief, his hand crushing mine. His parents, our true pillars, flanked us, his mother openly weeping, his father strong but red-eyed. Around us, a sea of faces, friends, colleagues, neighbors, even patient families from the pediatric ward. My childhood friend, Sarah, flew in from Chicago. My college roommate, Jessica, was there. The gaping void left by my parents and brother was a palpable presence, one everyone politely pretended not to notice. I saw the questioning glances, the hushed whispers. David's mother, sensing my distress, would gently place a protective arm around me when someone inevitably asked, smoothly changing the subject. Pastor Mark spoke beautifully about the brevity of Sophie's life, the depth of her impact. Some souls, he said, accomplish their purpose quickly. Sophie brought joy, love, a new dimension of humanity to Clara and David in her 6 months with them. During the service, my phone vibrated in my purse. I ignored it until the final prayer. And then I looked. Instagram notifications. Daniel had posted photos from his pool party. My parents, prominent, smiling, champagne glasses raised, celebrating, while their granddaughter was lowered into the earth mere miles away. When it was time for the burial, I nearly buckled. The raw, physical act of watching that tiny casket descend, it made Sophie's death undeniably real. This was final. This was forever. My baby was gone. I would never hold her again. Never see her grow. David's father had to steady him as he threw his handful of dirt onto the casket. David's mother held me, my entire body shaking with gut-wrenching sobs as I did the same. Later, our home filled with well-meaning people, food and flowers, but their words couldn't penetrate my overwhelming grief. I moved through it all like an automaton, accepting condolences, thanking, declining food I couldn't touch. In the quiet moments, a chilling habit formed. I'd listen for Sophie's cries through the baby monitor we hadn't put away. Each time, the devastating realization hit me anew. I would never hear her again. That week was a hazy nightmare. I took leave from work. David tried to return after 3 days but came home, unable to focus. We haunted our house, barely eating, sleeping, or speaking. The silence, where Sophie's babbling, crying, and laughter should have been, was deafening. My parents, no calls, no texts, no visits. David's parents, true to form, were there daily, bringing food, doing laundry, simply sitting with us. 7 days after the funeral, My mother's number flashed on my phone. I almost didn't answer. "Clara, how are you?" she asked, her voice light, casual, as if we'd merely gone a week without speaking, as if nothing significant had happened. "My daughter died and was buried without her grandparents present," I replied, my voice devoid of inflection. "How do you think I am?" "Now, Clara, there's no need for that tone. We're calling to invite you and David to Sunday dinner. It would be good for you to get out of the house, don't you think? Daniel and Olivia will be there. They can tell you all about their wedding plans. It might take your mind off things." Take my mind off things? As if my child's death was a minor inconvenience, something to be distracted from with wedding chatter. "I don't think we'll be able to make it," I said. "Clara, you can't just shut yourself away. Life goes on. It's been a week already. A week. A week since I buried my daughter, and she thought that was enough time to move on." "I have to go," I said and hung up. David found me on the bathroom floor, staring at the wall. When I told him, his expression turned dark. "They can't be serious," he muttered. "They are," I said. "They absolutely are." Against David's reluctance and my own better judgment, I agreed to Sunday dinner at my parents' house 2 weeks after Sophie's funeral. I needed to see them to understand how they could act as if nothing had happened. My mother greeted us with air kisses, careful not to smudge her lipstick. My father nodded from his armchair, barely glancing up from his newspaper. Daniel and Olivia were already there, wedding magazines spread out before them. "Clara, David, come in," my mother chirped. "Dinner's almost ready." Daniel was just showing us the venue he's considering. Absolutely breathtaking. No mention of Sophie, no acknowledgement of our loss, no recognition that we might not be in the mood for wedding venues. We sat stiffly on the love seat as Daniel, oblivious, dominated the conversation. Wedding budget, guest list, honeymoon options. My parents hung on his every word, offering suggestions, showering approval. I spotted a new photo on the mantelpiece. Daniel and Olivia, smiling broadly at the pool party. That pool party, the one chosen over Sophie's funeral. During dinner, my mother served Daniel's favorite roast beef. The conversation revolved solely around his promotion, Olivia's dress shopping, their rehearsal dinner plans. And then, over dessert, I snapped. "Did Sophie's funeral interfere with your pool party?" My voice, sharp and cold, sliced through their cheerful chatter about wedding photographers. The table fell silent. My mother's smile froze. "Clara," she said, a nervous titter. "Let's not bring up unpleasant topics at dinner." "Unpleasant topics?" I repeated, my gaze locked on hers. "You mean my daughter's death? Your granddaughter's funeral that you skipped?" "Now, Clara," my father interjected. "What's done is done. No sense dwelling on the past." "The past? It was 2 weeks ago." Daniel rolled his eyes. "See, this is why we didn't want to bring it up. You always make everything so dramatic, Clara." "Dramatic? My baby died, Daniel. And none of you came to her funeral because you were too busy having a pool party." "It wasn't just a pool party," my mother said defensively. "It was a celebration of Daniel and Olivia's engagement. We've been planning it for weeks. We couldn't cancel at the last minute. But you could miss your granddaughter's funeral?" I shot back. "You could tell me it's just a baby, and I can always have another one?" David, who had been eerily silent, slammed his fork down. The clatter echoed in the sudden quiet. "I've sat here trying to be respectful, but this is beyond belief. Do you have any idea what Clara has been through? What we've been through?" My mother looked affronted. "Of course we do. We're very sorry for your loss. But life must go on, mustn't it? Dwelling in grief isn't healthy." "It's been 2 weeks," David said, his voice dangerously quiet. 2 weeks since we buried our daughter, and you haven't once asked how we're doing. You haven't offered to help. You haven't acknowledged our pain in any way." My father cleared his throat. "We thought it best to give you space." "Space?" I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like indifference. It looks like you care more about Daniel's engagement party than your own granddaughter's death." "That's not fair, Clara," Daniel interjected. "Mom and Dad had already committed to my party. They couldn't be in 2 places at once," my mother added quickly. "They made a choice, Daniel," I said, my voice steady now. "And they chose you. as they always have. A tense silence fell over the table. Olivia, Daniel's fiancée, looked acutely uncomfortable, her eyes fixed on her plate. Actually, my mother finally blurted. Several relatives asked where we were during the funeral. We told them we couldn't attend due to health issues. Your father's back, you know. The revelation hit me with a sickening lurch. They had lied to the family. Ashamed enough to lie, but not ashamed enough to show up. You lied, I whispered. Well, we could hardly tell them we were at a pool party, could we? My mother retorted, as if this was the most reasonable thing in the world. People wouldn't understand. I don't understand, I said, standing up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. And I never will. David and I walked out, leaving our half-eaten desserts. In the car, he held my hand as I finally broke down, the full, devastating weight of my family's betrayal crashing over me. The month that followed was brutal. Our marriage, already reeling from Sophie's death, was now strained by the added burden of family tension. David and I began seeing a grief counselor specializing in infant loss, Dr. Eleanor. She asked about our support systems. David's family has been incredible, I told her. Mine less so. When I recounted the funeral, my parents' absence, their callous words, Dr. Eleanor's professional composure faltered for a moment, replaced by a flicker of shock. That sounds incredibly painful, she finally said. Have you always felt your parents favored your brother? That question, it opened a floodgate. Week after week, I unearthed a lifetime of subtle and not so subtle favoritism. The dance recital missed because Daniel had soccer practice. The forgotten birthdays overshadowed by his events. A college fund half the size of Daniel's because, as my mother once put it, girls usually get married and have a husband to take care of them. Dr. Eleanor introduced terms like golden child and scapegoat, explaining the dynamics of narcissistic family systems. With each session, a chilling clarity emerged. This wasn't just about the funeral. This was about a lifetime of being treated as less than, culminating in the ultimate dismissal of my most profound loss. What do I do with this knowledge? I asked Dr. Eleanor, desperate. How do I move forward? That depends on what you want, she replied gently. Some people maintain limited contact, with strict boundaries. Others find they need a clean break. What feels right to you? I thought about my parents' casual cruelty, the moments of solitary grief while they celebrated Daniel. I thought about Sophie, how she deserved grandparents who valued her, who would have moved heaven and earth to honor her brief life, her sacred death. I think, I said slowly, I need them to understand what they've done. Not just to me, but to Sophie, to her memory. Before I can even consider a future relationship, they need to face what happened. And if they can't or won't acknowledge it, Dr. Eleanor asked softly, then, I said, a new resolve settling deep within me, I'll have my answer. That night, I laid out my decision to David. I need to make them understand, I told him, my voice trembling. I need them to feel a fraction of the pain I felt, standing at that funeral alone. David's brow furrowed. What are you planning? Nothing destructive, I assured him. Just the truth they've been avoiding for years. I'm worried about you, he admitted. Confronting them, it might make things worse. Worse? I asked, a bitter laugh escaping me. Worse than losing our daughter and being told it doesn't matter because she's just a baby. Worse than standing alone at her funeral because a pool party was more important. I shook my head. I don't think that's possible, David. He pulled me close. Whatever you decide, I'm with you every step of the way. My decision was made. The time for silence was over. I didn't want revenge. Not exactly. I wanted acknowledgement, recognition of the pain they'd inflicted, an understanding of the damage. I wanted them to finally feel the weight of their choice, to see it clearly for what it was. And, above all, I wanted to ensure they could never rewrite history, never pretend they'd been supportive when they were anything but. My first step was declining Daniel's engagement party. The invitation arrived, thick cream envelope, gold embossing, pure Elizabeth. I sent a simple text. David and I won't be attending. Still grieving our daughter's death. The phone call started immediately. My mother first, then my father, then even Daniel. Clara, you can't miss Daniel's engagement party, my mother insisted. Family needs to stick together for these events. Family needed to stick together at Sophie's funeral too, I shot back. That's different, she said dismissively. This is a happy occasion. I'm not in a place to celebrate right now. It's been over a month, Clara. You need to move on. I hung up. My father's call was a familiar blend of guilt and manipulative paternal authority. Daniel's call, though, was the most surprising. Mom and Dad are upset you're not coming to my party, he said. Can't you just show up for an hour? It's important to them. Was Sophie's funeral important to you? I asked. A long pause. That's not fair. I barely knew her. Whose fault is that, Daniel? I pressed. You visited her exactly once in 6 months. She was your niece. Look, I'm sorry about what happened, he said quickly. It's awful, but life goes on, right? You and David can try again when you're ready. Try again. As if Sophie was a failed experiment, not our daughter. As if any future child could replace her, rather than be their own unique person. I won't be attending your party, I said firmly. Congratulations on your engagement. With that immediate pressure handled, I began my serious research. Books on family estrangement, narcissistic dynamics, grief. I joined online support groups for parents who'd lost children, finding sad relief that my experience wasn't unique. Many had faced insensitive comments, thoughtless actions, profound betrayals from family. One evening, I pulled out a box from my closet, a collection of evidence I hadn't realized I'd been gathering for a lifetime. Birthday cards with generic messages, or worse, references to Daniel's achievements. Photos where I was always on the periphery. Text messages showcasing patterns of neglect. I created a timeline, documenting the consistent pattern that culminated in their absence at Sophie's funeral. This wasn't for them, it was for me. To validate my own reality after years of gaslighting. Next, I reached out to extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins who had been at Sophie's funeral and noticed my parents' absence. I didn't offer information. I asked open-ended questions. We were told Thomas's back was acting up, my Aunt Carol said during our call, and that Elizabeth needed to stay home to care for him. Did that explanation seem odd to you? I asked. A pause. Well, yes. I remember thinking it was strange they couldn't make it even for a short time. But who am I to question? Everyone grieves differently. What if they weren't grieving at all? I asked quietly. What if they were at Daniel's pool party instead? The silence on the line was deafening. Similar conversations with other relatives painted a clear picture of my parents' deception. They told consistent lies, creating a narrative where they were victims of circumstance, not individuals who had made a deliberate, heartless choice. After 2 months of meticulous preparation, I was ready for the final step. I texted my parents. I'd like to meet with you to discuss moving forward from everything that's happened. Just the 3 of us. This Sunday at 2 p.m. at your house. My mother replied immediately. Wonderful. I'm so glad you're ready to put this behind us. I'll make your favorite lemon cake. The casualness of her response, the assumption that I wanted reconciliation without any acknowledgement of their actions, only solidified my resolve. The night before the meeting, David held me as I rehearsed what I would say. Are you sure about this? He asked. You don't owe them an explanation for cutting contact if that's what you decide. I'm not doing this for them, I explained, my voice firm. I'm doing it for me. For Sophie. I need to speak my truth, to stand up for her memory. If I just disappear, they'll rewrite the narrative. They'll tell everyone I was too consumed by grief, too unstable, too unreasonable. I took a deep breath. I need to make it clear why I'm making this choice. I understand, he said, his arms tightening around me. Just remember, whatever happens tomorrow, you have people who love you. Who really love you. I held him tighter, so grateful for his unwavering support. The next morning, I placed a framed photo of Sophie in my purse, along with my carefully compiled documentation and the letter I'd painstakingly written. I dressed carefully in a blue blouse, Sophie's favorite color to watch, and the necklace with her birthstone David had given me. Ready? David asked as I prepared to leave. I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. My parents' house looked precisely as it always had. Immaculate lawn, perfectly trimmed hedges, vibrant flowers. My mother, in a floral dress and pearls, answered the door as if this were a routine social call. Clara, come in, come in. Your father's in the living room. I've just taken your favorite lemon cake out of the oven. The house, thick with the scent of lemon and sugar, once a beacon of comfort, now felt like a cruel mockery. My father, in his usual armchair, offered a perfunctory pat on my shoulder, the closest he ever came to physical affection. Good to see you, Clara. You're looking well. I wasn't. I was gaunt, with dark circles under my eyes, but my appearance had never truly registered with him. Let's have some cake, my mother chirped, already heading to the kitchen. Actually, I said, my voice steadier than I'd anticipated, I'd prefer to talk. My parents exchanged that glance, the one from childhood that said, Clara's being difficult again. All right, my mother conceded, settling onto the couch. What did you want to discuss? I sat opposite them, placing my purse beside me. I wanted to talk about Sophie's funeral. And why you weren't there. My mother's smile tightened. Clara, we've been through this. We had a prior commitment. A pool party, I stated flatly. An engagement celebration for your brother, my father corrected, as if the terminology mattered. I'd like to show you something. I reached into my purse, pulling out Sophie's professional portrait from when she was 4 months old. Pink dress, bright blue eyes, a gummy smile that melted my heart. I placed it on the coffee table between us. My parents glanced at it uncomfortably, but said nothing. This is your granddaughter, I said, my voice raw. This is Sophie. The Sophie whose funeral you skipped to attend a pool party. The Sophie you referred to as just a baby. The Sophie your son, my brother, visited exactly once in her entire life. Clara, my mother began, but I held up a hand. I'm not finished. For as long as I can remember, you have made it clear that Daniel matters more than I do. His achievements, his milestones, his happiness always took precedence. I accepted that. I built a life with people who valued me, despite your indifference. But when you chose to skip Sophie's funeral, when you dismissed her death as insignificant, you crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. I pulled out my folder of documentation. I've been thinking about this a lot, trying to understand if this was an isolated incident or part of a pattern. I think the evidence speaks for itself. I handed them the printed timeline. Forgotten birthdays because of Daniel's tournaments, my college graduation dinner cut short because Daniel had a date, the paltry financial assistance I received versus the substantial support given to him. My parents stared at the papers, a mixture of confusion and defensiveness on their faces. What is this supposed to be? My father asked. It's a record of your choices, I replied. A pattern that culminated in the most painful day of my life, when I buried my daughter alone, while you celebrated with Daniel. You weren't alone, my mother protested. David was there and his parents. Yes, they were, I confirmed. Thank God for them. But my parents, Sophie's grandparents, chose a party over her funeral. And then they lied to the rest of the family about why they weren't there. My father's face flushed. We didn't think it would look good. No, I agreed. It wouldn't look good. Because it wasn't good. It was cruel. It was selfish. It was the clearest possible statement of your priorities. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshots I'd saved. Daniel's Instagram post from the party, timestamped during Sophie's service. My mother sipping champagne while I listened to the pastor speak over my daughter's casket. My father laughing with friends while David and I threw dirt onto our baby's grave. Do you have any idea what it felt like to see these after the funeral? I asked, my voice finally cracking, the raw emotion breaking through my carefully constructed composure. To know that not only were you absent, but you were celebrating. My mother's composure finally cracked. Tears silently tracked down her face, leaving streaks in her makeup. What do you want from us, Clara? We can't change what happened. No, you can't, I conceded. But you can acknowledge it. You can stop pretending it was acceptable. You can recognize the pain you caused. We're sorry you were hurt, my father said stiffly. That's not an apology, I pointed out. That's placing the blame on me for being hurt, rather than on you for your actions. A thick silence descended. My mother looked at my father, clearly expecting him to fix this, to wave away my drama as he always had. But even he seemed to recognize his usual tactics wouldn't work here. What is it you want us to say? My mother finally asked, an edge of frustration in her voice. I pulled out the letter I'd written, my final piece of evidence. I don't want you to say anything. I want you to listen. This is what I need you to hear." I unfolded the paper and began to read. "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm writing this because I need you to understand what your choices have meant to me. When Sophie died, my world collapsed. Everything I knew, everything I believed, everything I hoped for was shattered in an instant. The only thing that could have made that pain worse was facing it alone. And that's exactly what your choice forced me to do. When you told me that Sophie was just a baby and that Daniel's party mattered more, you didn't just miss a funeral. You invalidated her entire existence. You told me that my child, your granddaughter, was disposable, replaceable, unimportant. You told me that my grief was inconvenient, my pain exaggerated, my loss negligible compared to Daniel's celebration. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being treated as less than, of having my experiences minimized, my achievements overlooked, my needs dismissed. I've spent my entire life trying to earn the love and attention you gave Daniel freely, never understanding that the problem wasn't me, it was you. I'm not writing this to hurt you or to extract an apology. I'm writing because I need you to know that I see the truth now. I see the pattern. I understand that this will never change because you don't want it to change. And knowing that, I need to protect myself and the memory of my daughter from further harm. For now, I've decided to take a step back from our relationship. I need time and space to grieve Sophie without having her existence diminished. I need to heal from not just her loss, but from the additional trauma of your response to it. I need to build a life surrounded by people who value me, who would have moved heaven and earth to be present on the worst day of my life. If someday you're willing to truly acknowledge what happened, to take responsibility for your actions without excuses or deflections, to commit to change, then perhaps we can begin to rebuild. Until then, this distance is necessary for my well-being and for honoring Sophie's memory the way she deserves. With both sadness and resolve, I signed it. Clara. When I finished reading, my mother was silently crying, mascara leaving dark trails. My father sat rigid, jaw clenched, but his eyes, for a fleeting moment, held something I rarely saw, uncertainty. "You can't be serious," he finally managed, cutting us off over one missed event. I carefully folded the letter and returned it to my purse. "It wasn't one event," I stated. "It was the final event in a lifetime of events. And I'm not cutting you off permanently. I'm stepping back until you can acknowledge the reality of what happened and commit to change." "This is ridiculous," my father insisted. "Everyone has favorite children. It's natural. We've done everything for you." "Thomas, stop," my mother interrupted, her voice uncharacteristically sharp. She was staring at Sophie's photo on the table, truly looking at it for the first time. "She had your eyes," she whispered. "Yes," I replied softly. "She did. I never really looked at her," my mother admitted, her voice barely audible. "I was always so busy with Daniel's things, with the engagement plans." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Elizabeth, don't. Clara's upset. She'll come around. She always does." "No," I said firmly. "Not this time. This isn't something I can just get over. This is my line in the sand." I stood, gathering my purse. "I've said what I came to say. The ball is in your court now. I hope someday you'll understand what you've done and make different choices. Until then, I need this distance." As I turned to leave, my mother's voice, broken and tearful, called out, "Clara, please don't go like this." I paused at the door. "I'm not going anywhere, Mom. I'm right where I've always been. You're the ones who weren't there when it mattered most." I walked out of their house, a strange, overwhelming mix of grief and liberation washing over me. In the car, I sat for a moment, hands shaking, but my mind was clearer than it had been in months. I had spoken my truth. I had stood up for Sophie, for myself, for the undeniable reality of our experiences. Whatever happened next was up to them. As I drove home, my phone began to buzz. Daniel, apparently informed of the confrontation, sent angry texts, accusing me of upsetting our parents unnecessarily. But then, messages from several extended family members began to trickle in, messages of support. They'd learned the truth about the funeral, either from my direct conversations or through the family grapevine. My Aunt Carol's message stood out. "I had no idea, Clara. No idea they chose a party over Sophie's funeral. I'm heartbroken for you and ashamed of my brother. Whatever you need, I'm here." By the time I reached home, the narrative my parents had so carefully constructed was crumbling. They would need to face not just me, but the judgment of the extended family, who now knew their lies. David was waiting, concern etched on his face. How did it go? I sank into his arms, emotionally exhausted, but strangely peaceful. I did it, I whispered. I said everything I needed to say. And now, he asked. And now we wait. Either they'll recognize what they've done and try to make amends, or they won't. Either way, I've done what I needed to do for Sophie. For myself. That night, I slept better than I had since Sophie died. Not because the grief was gone. It would never be gone, but because I had lifted the additional burden of pretending my parents' behavior was acceptable. I had honored Sophie by insisting her life and death mattered, regardless of what they believed. 6 months after my confrontation, I stood in the garden David and I had planted in Sophie's memory. Spring had arrived, painting the space with daffodils and tulips around the small angel statue. David worked beside me, carefully mulching the perennials. It's beautiful, he said, wrapping an arm around my waist. Sophie would have loved playing here. The pain was still sharp, but no longer debilitating. Yes, I agreed, a soft smile touching my lips. She would have. In the months since that fateful meeting, we'd found a new normal. 3 times a week, I attended a support group for bereaved parents. Twice a month, David and I saw Dr. Eleanor, navigating our grief as a couple. Sophie's nursery was now a memorial room, not a shrine, but a peaceful space with photos, her favorite toys, a rocking chair where we could simply sit and feel her presence. My relationship with my parents had also transformed, though not in ways I'd predicted. After our confrontation, they'd retreated into weeks of silence. Then, a surprise. A handwritten letter arrived from my father, Thomas, 3 months after Sophie's death. Clara, he wrote, I have never been good with emotions or admitting when I'm wrong. But after reading your letter again and again, after seeing the timeline you created, after hearing from relatives who attended Sophie's funeral, I can no longer deny the truth of what you said. We were wrong. Terribly, unforgivably wrong. Not just about the funeral, but about many things over many years. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to try to make amends. But I want you to know that I hear you, and I am sorry. Truly sorry. It wasn't perfect, it didn't address everything, but it was the most genuine acknowledgement of pain he had ever given me. My mother's response arrived a week later. A small package containing a custom-made ornament with Sophie's name, birth date, and a pair of angel wings. The note inside was simple. I should have been there. I will regret that choice for the rest of my life. I'm so sorry, Clara. These gestures didn't erase the past. They couldn't undo the damage or bring Sophie back. But they were steps, small, hesitant steps toward acknowledgement and potential healing. We established careful boundaries, monthly dinners, initially just my parents and me, later including David when he felt ready. Ground rules were clear. No dismissing Sophie's memory, no changing the subject when grief surfaced, no comparisons to Daniel's life events. Daniel himself was another surprise. After his initial angry texts, he showed up at our door one rainy April afternoon. I've been thinking, he said awkwardly, about what happened. About Sophie's funeral. About everything, really. He brought a small pink rose bush for Sophie's garden. As we dug the hole together, he admitted, I never really thought about how things looked from your side. Mom and Dad always made such a big deal about everything I did that it seemed normal. I didn't realize what you weren't getting. It wasn't your fault, I told him as we patted soil around the rose bush. You were a child too. We were both shaped by their choices. Still, he said, I should have been at her funeral. She was my niece. I'm sorry, Clara. These moments of acknowledgement didn't erase the grief, but they lightened the crushing burden of feeling unseen and unheard. They created space for true healing to begin. As summer turned to fall, I found myself drawn to volunteer work with a local organization supporting parents who had experienced infant loss. My nursing background gave me professional insight. My personal experience allowed me to connect with parents in a way textbooks never could. During one support session, a young mother named Ashley broke down, describing how her in-laws had suggested she just try again, barely a month after losing her son. They don't understand, she sobbed. They act like he was replaceable, like any baby would do. I took her hand. I understand. My parents missed my daughter's funeral for a pool party. They told me she was just a baby, and my brother's engagement mattered more. Ashley's eyes widened. What did you do? I stood up for my daughter's memory, I said. I made them face what they'd done. And then I focused on healing myself, with or without their understanding. Did it help? She asked. Standing up to them? I thought about it. It didn't bring Sophie back. It didn't erase the pain of burying her alone. But it honored her. It said to the world, her life mattered. Her death mattered. And that helped me heal. Working with these parents became my purpose. Not to replace Sophie, nothing could ever do that, but to create meaning from the devastation of her loss. Each family I helped was a tribute to her brief life, a way to ensure her impact continued. David and I began tentatively discussing the possibility of another child. Not to replace Sophie, we were clear about that with each other and Dr. Eleanor, but to expand our family. The conversation was fraught with fear and guilt. Would loving another child diminish our love for Sophie? Would every milestone be shadowed by thoughts of what Sophie would have been doing? I'm scared, I admitted to David one night in Sophie's memorial room. Terrified, actually. Me too, he said. But I think Sophie would want us to have room in our hearts for another child. Not instead of her. In addition to her. My relationship with my parents continued to evolve slowly. There were setbacks, old patterns emerging, comparisons to Daniel's life. But there was also growth. My mother began asking about my volunteer work with genuine interest. My father established a small scholarship fund in Sophie's name at the children's hospital where I worked. During a family gathering for his birthday, I overheard him talking to a cousin who'd just had a baby. Treasure every moment, he said, with an unusual tremor in his voice. Every single moment matters. I learned that lesson too late with my granddaughter. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was progress. On the 1-year anniversary of Sophie's death, we held a small remembrance ceremony in our garden. David's parents were there, steady and supportive. My parents came, bringing flowers, standing awkwardly but respectfully at the edge of the garden. Daniel and Olivia attended briefly, placing a small teddy bear near the angel statue. As we released biodegradable balloons into the sky, I felt Sophie's presence, not supernaturally, but in the profound impact she had left on all our lives. In her 6 short months, she taught us about unconditional love. In her death, she taught us about the fragility of life. And in the aftermath, she taught us about the power of standing up for truth, about setting boundaries, about honoring grief rather than rushing past it. I had lost my daughter. That would always be true. But I had found my voice, my strength, and a new purpose born from that devastating loss. To anyone watching who has faced similar loss or family betrayal, I want you to know, healing is possible. It's not perfect, the scars remain, but it's enough to find joy, purpose, and to build a life that honors both your loss and your future. If Sophie's story has resonated with you, please consider supporting organizations that help families experiencing infant loss. And if you've ever had to stand up to family during your darkest moments, remember, you are not alone. You have the right to set boundaries, to demand respect for your grief, to insist that your pain matters. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, please like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And I'd truly love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to confront your family during a time of immense grief? What helped you heal? Your experiences might just be the comfort someone else needs on this difficult path. Remember, honoring your truth isn't selfish. Sometimes, it's the most important, most courageous thing you can do for yourself and for those you've lost. Be gentle with yourselves. You deserve that kindness.